have fun.
Man, yeah, I appreciate it. What's going on, everybody? So yeah, King Tez on here on Discord. Real name Anthony Smith. Been threat hunting for quite a while. It feels like now, since let's see, 2018, something like that. So started off Air Force Cyber. Was part of the CNMF team there, doing threat hunts for foreign mission partners. So U.S. and allied nations. Started out on the network side, did a lot of fun things there. Stuff I wish I could talk more about, but it was definitely a good time. Learned a lot, and very grateful to be able to get a start there because I know how hard it is to kind of break into cybersecurity. Yes, another Anthony. Let's go. And then yeah, I got out, was medically retired, went on to Goldman Sachs, got to do some threat hunting there. Very interesting to see that, being done at an enterprise level, especially when money's not an issue, right? And kind of, hey, we'll just toss everything and the kitchen sink at it. Um, and shortly thereafter that, was able to join in with Huntress. Was a senior slash only threat hunter there, with the exception of one, and he is in the audience today, Bumbucha, really great dude. But yeah, really got to do some great things there. Seeing really at the small business side, the kind of threats they're facing, right? Really watching cyber criminals kind of go at it, and going toe to toe with them, really getting to find really cool things, CACBot, and other things like that. A lot of the ransomware actors, I'm sure Bumbucha would probably toss them in there in the comments, but it was definitely an interesting way to go about things. And currently now, I am a senior threat engineer, fancy word for detection engineer at Conquest Cyber, who just got acquired by Blue Voyant. So I'll see how that goes. But yeah, so threat hunting really has been my thing. I guess just adversarial work, right? Everything from threat intelligence, threat hunting, and detection engineering and threat research. Really just, I guess, my bread and butter, things I enjoy doing. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of go over threat hunting, the basics of it, what really it is, and a lot of the key factors with it. So let's get to it. I don't have any slides. I'm not a slide kind of guy, and I couldn't figure out a theme that I really wanted to go with. So sorry. You're gonna have to just hear me speak and deal with my face. Um, but yeah, if you guys have questions while I go at it, or want to bring anything up, I'm usually pretty good with the crowd work. I'll try to talk to it, whatever I can do. So yeah, let's get into it. I think one of the first things that you always have to kind of go over, especially now since threat hunting has always been, has become kind of this like marketing thing that people like to go for. What is it? What's really the purpose of it? Like, I don't understand. A lot of people are like, I don't. What does even a threat hunter do? It sounds like this cool, awesome thing, but really, threat hunting is that a proactive approach, right? There's IR where you've had something happen, something wrong happen, right? And you're kind of going after it from that standpoint. But threat hunting kind of takes the middle of the road, if you will, where I want to find out what is happening that we don't know about. What have we already missed, potentially, and maybe even find some gaps that we already have in, whether that be detection capabilities or technology capabilities, or uh, other things like, hey, did this detection fire as it should have, or here's some ongoing threats. Had we got hit by this specific threat actor, would we have been able to find them? It's a very unique field in that way. I guess kind of unique. It definitely has a lot of hands in the pot, right? You got to be able to work closely with SOC analysts, work closely with reverse engineers to, shout out to MB. I don't know if he's here on this Discord, but really good dude. Um, and also, work closely with detection engineering and other, even GRC for that matter, right? it's very kind of intertwined with a lot of things, and it takes a certain amount of skill and just I think thought process is really the big thing to figure out how do you do it effectively and how can you do it to the point where hey you're getting good stuff out of it. And really we can go into like how it differs, right? And like I said earlier, it's that proactive approach. It's taking that, all right, well, I need to just go look for something bad right now. And how do you prioritize that is a big question. And how do you go about that? What is it that we need to prioritize and what is it that we should be looking for? It's definitely interesting in that fact. But yeah, we'll get more into that. Does anyone at this point have any questions or comments? I see you typing. Got you. We'll be going into like the importance of it and all. But I'll give you like a few seconds. Um, yeah, well, that's going. We'll go into like I guess the importance of it, right? The importance really is that evolving landscape. As you guys know, bad guys, good guys, right? Cops, robbers, whatever. There's always a methodical approach. Let's see. So your goal is to identify new threats. Ah, that's a good one. Um, I guess we can hit this real quick. New threats? Yes and no. It depends on the idea of new, right? It could be new in the sense of it is new to the environment, or new in the sense of it's new completely to all of the cybersecurity field, right? Um, so it's not so much trying to find the new things, but more or less trying to find what has been missed, and proactively going after that. There's always some debate going on, like IOCs, is that really threat hunting? But it is a small part of it, right? Using those IOCs to go look for maybe something you haven't caught, especially something new. So yes, in a sense, you are going after newer threats to the environment. Um, and then, as far as what defines a threat, that could be a number of things, right? There's insider threats. There are the external threats, like the cybercrime groups, or APTs, anything like that. And even misconfigurations. While it's not a threat as in it's being exploited and having a negative impact on you, but it is a threat as in, hey, if I was to leave my door wide open in the middle of the night, there's risk involved, and there is a threat that exists in that space where someone can walk in and take whatever they want. Um, so that's kind of how I would define a threat. And then as far as threat actors, that's a big one. I guess anyone willing to go and do bad things to you would be something that I would consider a threat actor. And then new TTPs. Man, I feel like MITRE and a good amount of other frameworks have covered those pretty well. Um, but as we see an evolving realm into like especially identity, right? If you were to look at the cloud environment, definitely seeing a lot of potentially new TTPs where we're going to see newer methods to go ahead and um, get whatever the threat actor is looking for or the threat in general. And yeah, that framework, I definitely work heavily off of MITRE. It's just easy. They kind of have it all written out a little bit. Makes life move a lot smoother for sure. Um, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll get into a lot of those too. But yes, audit definitely, but also just security practices as far as hygiene, right? Um, and also trying to find bad things that are happening. It definitely has its place in the incident response platform. So I mean, yeah, we'll definitely cover a lot of these too. So yeah, like I was saying, the importance of the threat hunting, right? It's that evolving threat landscape. Everything's so far changing. Always there's always going to be a new threat or a new tactic that may be used by a different threat actor. Um, Depending on the industry you work in, right? There may be different practices that threat actors are using to go ahead and try to find the next thing. Definitely have seen a few of them. What's a good one? Bumbucha. I know we've had a few good. Well, yeah. So managed engine, seeing how they kind of utilize manage engine as a new initial access point. um, it's always going to be changing. There's always going to be something to find, because just like us, the blue guys, right, the bad guys are also trying to figure out how to bypass security measures. um so with that, that's kind of that like importance of threat hunting, is that if it was static and it was that easy, there would be no need for a lot of what we do, right? Even reverse engineering. If the same malware worked all the time and we could find it all the time, it all right, we've solved security. But because it's constantly changing, that kind of just shows the importance of having a solid threat hunting team, which includes detection engineering as well as threat intelligence. And yeah, I guess that just kind of goes into like the limitations, right, of traditional security approaches, that signature based, right? If I don't have a signature for a piece of malware or what have you, I can't detect it, right? if if for some reason it fires, and okay, well, uh whatever ed or av you use doesn't see it, then do you just assume you're good, or what is it? And threat hunting kind of works in that behavioral based approach, right? um what's happening? What are these tactics that we're seeing that they're executing? What kind of behavior can I get grab onto to try to figure it out? Definitely saw a lot of that with like the one node execution, right? um, Seeing that chain of events, what happens from that, right? Whether that be file creation or malicious network connections, and tying that all together to a single piece of detection technology allows for catching those a lot easier, without having to rely specifically on a signature, which, as you guys know, is easily changed in some aspects. Uh, Obviously, there's some in-depth stuff that you can go into, but even those can be changed as long as the threat actor is able to find out what exactly is blocking or preventing that malware from running. um, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap between GRC and threat hunting. It's great, especially in an enterprise kind of level. There is the man, that crown jewel analysis, right? GRC understands the risks and what needs to be compliant. And as far as that is concerned, to a threat hunter, right, I need to be able to prioritize based off of those business risks and the compliance that the company may need to be following, especially if we're dealing with like HIPAA or CMMC, CMMI, those kind of NIST frameworks as well. Super important to be able to understand what GRC is doing, and then also, hey, how can we help each other out? What's important and what should we be going after? And maybe, informing GRC from the threat hunting perspective, like, hey, I think we could do better here, and maybe you can help me communicate that to the key stakeholders. But yeah, so what are the objectives of threat hunting? We've mentioned it a lot. That proactive identification of threats. Um, Really, that's probably the key one. But also, that can go into development of uh, detectors, right? It runs into the detection engineering process. It could also run into the reverse engineering process, and like I mentioned, the GRC process as well. So really, it's a holistic deal, right? To try to bring it all together, bring a or build a secure kind of platform, a secure cybersecurity framework within a company or multiple companies to help them, better their hygiene, better their defenses, and also, if there is a bad guy, get them out. Um, which I guess it also, can impact the IR response kind of, or the, yeah, incident response stuff that's going on. But yeah, early detection and response to incidents is key, especially since, recently we've been seeing that dwell times for certain threat actors could dip down to about 4 hours from on box to the execution of ransomware, or other things like that, exfiltration, right, and extortion. They're getting quick because they know the longer they're in, the if they're found before that, some of their key objectives can't be met. Um, so yeah, that early detection piece is key to really, why threat hunting is important, I think. And yeah, we'll get into some of the key components of hunting. So really, I've always kind of broken it down into a few things. But I guess we can start off with that hypothesis generation, right? That I think that is so key to threat hunting. And this is kind of where the interlap from GRC and threat intel is so important. Even, understanding the limitations of what detection engineering is seeing, that kind of leads to that prioritization and hypothesis generation, right? If I understand we're good with our servers behind a VPN or whatever, putting that red hat on, and kind of thinking through concepts of, okay, well, what would it look like if, um, in that scientific approach, right? Or understanding from GRC's perspective, here's our crown jewels, here are the biggest risks to our company, and then, going through, okay, well, if I was a threat actor and I knew, okay, this is really easy to get to, a very simple target, what would that look like in telemetry to be able to find something bad happening? Or how could I, um, attack that? And then in turn, what would that look like if I did? Um, and that kind of goes into that, okay, now I have this hypothesis. I'm going to go ahead and move into the data collection and analysis, right? I am testing that hypothesis through, log sources and using, specific queries, whatever, I guess, query, technology you're using, whether that be EDR, a seam, heck, you could even use PowerShell, if you're a smaller shop, right? It's testing that, it's collecting that data and analyzing it. um, and that in and of itself is an iterative process, because you could have the best idea in the world where you're like, oh man, it would look like this, I could use this tool and it would look kind of like this. And then you go ahead and test it in live data, and all of a sudden there are thousands of results that come from that. And it gets messy real quick, for sure. um, and in that instance, it's where that iterative, process comes in, right? I understand, analyze, orient myself, if the OODA loop, if anyone's familiar, um, decide, and then reiterate on that again. I understand, okay, this I could probably cut out, this looks legitimate or benign. Run through it again. Hopefully that takes out enough, of the data to really, try to hone in on the bad stuff, and continually do that until the amount of data that is back is reasonable. And I guess reasonable is, is something different for everybody, right? And it depends on the technology. And I mean, if you could script it all out, and, especially do some correlative things, it makes it a lot easier. But yes, that is how you prevent false positives in situations, is just iterating through, and just, hitting the ground and doing the work that you need to do. And really, I guess, shameless plug, sorry guys, is that tools like malcore can help with that. Um if you have something that you're unaware of, and you're just like, I don't even know, this might be good, this might be bad, this is the first time I'm seeing it, right? One, running it through something like malcore can give you that contextualized uh, info on the back end of what's going on with it. Is it bad? Is it something I should be worried about? But also, there's certain things that you can do, like grouping, right? Where, all right, is this an outlier from the grouping? If all of my network servers are using the same thing, I think we're okay. And yeah, that's just kind of that data collection and making sure you get those false positives out there. I will get to that for sure. Let's see. Contextual understanding of the environment. This one's a big one, especially if you're working in an enterprise. It really helps you understand what's going on, right? As you guys know, IT is crazy. We kind of add things willy nilly without the security mindset first. We just kind of, on the IT side, just, all right, well, we need this. This is going to solve a business problem. Um, let's go ahead and implement it. And it seems safe enough. Yes, there will be some security concerns, hopefully from an enterprise level, but small businesses definitely not so much. Um, but threat hunting can help contextualize that, and through that, creating that baseline, right? You get to understand the good, and by understanding the good, you can know bad. So that is one of the key components, especially that can be valuable to individual organizations, is helping them understand what's going on in their environment. Hey, maybe you don't want to have PS exec as your administrative tool. Maybe there's something that is a good replacement that's equally as secure, or maybe your accounts aren't secure. It kind of blurs the line between that red teaming kind of thing too, because that's the purpose of a red team as well, is like, hey, these are some of the issues that I see within your environment. We just aren't doing the bad stuff, or abusing the I guess the cyber hygiene issues. um and yeah, it really helps the collaborative effort between all the teams. Like I said, it really draws in from everybody. I don't know if I could have done a lot of the things that I did at Huntress without communicating with SOC analysts almost constantly, right? Those guys are on the ground, their boots on the ground, they're really, coming face to face with these threats, and it really helps understand broadly what's going on, to really kind of understand, okay, we've seen a lot of exploitation of file servers, or managed file services. What does that look like? Taking in from the outside world, what are a lot of products that are being used for those file management services? um, and hey, what does that execution look like normally, and what would be outside of that baseline? So I think collaboration is key, and it definitely helps threat hunters, but also helps the rest of the security organization really get after it and understand what's going on. As far as favorite threat hunting tool, man, there are some good ones out there, but really, I just like getting my hands on an EDR, right? Anything that I can use to query data, that is where I'm at, and the other tools just kind of live in between. But definitely, as I'm running through things and finding bad stuff, definitely I've been using malcore a lot lately, just to validate thoughts, or understand if I do have a piece of malware, what else would happen with that. What network connections could I be looking for? What file uploads could I see? What kind of things should I be also searching for that may have been missed, because EDR is not perfect? So definitely tools like this. Another one, man, Hunt.io has been good as far as looking at open directories, and really searching through um, what's going on, what tooling are we seeing out in the wild. Census, census is a good one to really understand the architecture of some of the threat actors because sometimes they'll use the same kind of SSL keys, and you could find different servers to be able to, okay, well, if I'm using this, or if they're using this IP now, and this IP over here is related to that one that I just saw, I can then use that information to, one, probably create a detection, but also hunt for those IPs that are related and go ahead and see if anything else has fired, or potentially they've used different IPs in different host or something like that. Um, as far as favorite EDR, I don't know if I have a favorite per se. I really think that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which I think now is like Microsoft XDR, is really good for a lot of reasons. It it has the ability to look at a lot of things and correlate on the spot. And I would say the same with CrowdStrike Falcon. Um, Very easy to do some correlative things because it's built on Splunk, which Splunk is also really good. Um, and I've used a lot of Kibana as the EDR tool, which is just Huntress's EDR, being able to seamlessly query, especially with a fast response time. They all have their pros and cons. I think I've used generally a lot of them similarly or for the same amount of time. But yeah, I think that's kind of my EDR thing. And yes, I do agree. We'll definitely hold off. um, but yeah, with that, we could kind of jump into the threat hunting methodologies. Um, a lot of them exist from, man, there is the hunt evil methodology, which you could find with Sands, and I'll send that up. A very good, just reference, a good reference sheet to be able to be, it's really understanding good. It's if I know the good, I could go hunt for evil. What happens outside of my baseline? And the more obviously hosts you get into, the noisier it gets. It doesn't get. It's not as simple sometimes, unfortunately, but it really does help be able to understand what should be normal, and it helps when you're doing those iterative cycles of queries. Okay, no, this is fine. It's not perfect. I don't know of any hunt methodology that is perfect yet. Um, I've definitely used one in my time in CNMF where we just kind of hit the ground and we went. There was no real methodology besides like just the hunt evil. Um, so really, that's probably my favorite one. I'm sure if you do a Google search of some other frameworks, you'd probably find some more. And I've kind of developed my own where you start with the hypothesis generation into the querying, like I mentioned earlier, into the analysis, and then to the reporting phase of it, right? Being able to brief, hey, these are the things that have happened. Um, Here's some things that we could do next time that'll be better, and things that we could whitelist right now that we know, hey, this exists in this environment. Um, and we don't need to worry about it. I know Bambucha and I have had running lists of things that we've seen that we've been like, what is this? And then determined, never mind, it's completely normal in this environment, and we can disregard next time we're looking for bad things. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of been my hunt methodology: is that hypothesis generation, that querying, analysis, and reporting, and it just continually goes. You never stop hunting the same thing because they could turn around and do the same thing differently where you would have missed it if you did it the same way again. Um, but yeah, I think we've covered some of how those data sources, what data sources you could use. But I guess specifically log files and events. Super easy if you're using a scene based tool. It makes it a lot easier, or EDR for sure. Network traffic analysis, that one gets fuzzy because it's expensive for a lot of places, and a lot of places don't tend to use it. Maybe some NetFlow for sure. but it can help you understand, like, hey, if we always see server client communication, but then all of a sudden we see client client communication specifically over like SMB, right? Just an example. That can kind of, hey, that's interesting. That's different. That's not something that we typically see. So network data does have its place. Uh, and yes, it is super expensive for sure. Um, and it does have its place as far as north south network communications, right? Understanding um, what's coming into your network and what's leaving your network. But it definitely is pretty pricey. EDR really hands down. My thesis is this: is that most of what you're going to find, I think 80% of intrusions you could probably find just using EDR. Um, Also, it can be pricey, specifically how you plan on using it, if you're using a managed server or not. But a good team of some analysts and hunters and all those fun people could definitely get you so much good out of a good EDR system. And I really do not have one specifically that I'm like, yes, this is the best one. They all can pretty much do almost the same thing. And you could definitely get your money's worth out of all of them for sure. Uh, but yeah, I think EDR gives you the best bang for your buck as far as threat hunting is concerned for sure. Um, and then yeah, threat intelligence feeds, super important. I got to learn a lot from my old coworker Joe Slowick, super smart guy, super knowledgeable, and you know, not all threat intel feeds are built the same, but as long as you're using them and understanding the business need for whoever you're using it for, uh, you're pretty much set. I think one of my favorite threat intel feeds is Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it nowadays. Um, it works. It helps. You could find a lot of it or a lot from it, and super thankful for the community and a number of Discord servers and yeah, there's so many that you can kind of go out there and specific to your environment, especially without not paying so much money for something like Anomaly or anything like that. But that is one of the good data sources for threat hunting, to be able to understand the current threat landscape and how that may affect the environment which you're doing threat hunting in. Um, and yeah, so there's a few techniques that you could use with those tools or data sources that I mentioned. So there is signature based threat hunting, right? So that's kind of that IOC, IP hash, even a file name if people are getting lazy. Um, there's that ability to do it, right? Usually those are super brittle. They'll break pretty easily. All it takes is a change of a character or something like that, um, or a few spaces in a file to go ahead and break the hash. But mostly you can do that, especially for ongoing things where, hey, this is super easy. Let me just do this search. If it finds something not great but also great, you found it. Um, and yeah, it definitely has its place to be able to quickly weed out stuff and say, okay, we looked for it, didn't find it. That's great. How can we integrate this and make it simpler next time? Anomaly detection. I think that kind of fits into that hunt evil space where you're looking outside of that baseline, right? This is not part of the normal. It is an anomaly. Um, we've seen a number of connections to this IP, but all of a sudden we see massive amount of data leaving to this IP. That's a little strange. That's probably bad. Let's take a look at that. Or, recently looking more so at identity intrusion, right? You can look at it like, and yeah, Babush and I have had many conversations about this, but when you're looking at, you know, IPs that have signed into that identity, right? They're always logging in from I don't know, Venice Beach, California, but all of a sudden you see a login from Lubbock, Texas, somewhere completely random. That could be an anomaly that requires better looking into, and there's certain ways you can go about that with correlative data techniques to find those anomalies, and that's you can do that with the tools I mentioned or data sources I mentioned, in a good mindset going with the threat hunting technique. And then lastly, behavioral analysis. That one, best bang for your buck for sure. Well, I think it's up there with anomaly detection. Um, yeah, understanding, because a lot of these things, right, nowadays, as far as intrusions, are automated. Um, so it's gonna be similar across the board. They're going to exploit, I don't know, an Exchange server, run a Silver Arrow backdoor, PowerShell backdoor payload, and then you'll see a number of enumerations commands. You could detect that out. You could build a detection based off of just that execution pattern, just based off of that behavior, right? If I see a user was created using net user and then was immediately added to a group, we could understand, okay, maybe that was scripted behavior that was just to be easy to pick up on. That is how you can really get after a lot of those TTPs. Those are the things that are hard to change for threat actors, right? um, if you guys are familiar with the pyramid of pain, that right is where that it is hard for threat actors to go ahead and change up their techniques with that one. And here is the pyramid of pain for reference. So yeah, behavior analysis, definitely a big win in threat hunting. Probably some of the easier stuff to look at if you don't have things like correlative data to be able to compare easily for anomaly detection. um, and a little stronger than just that signature based hunting where it could be flimsy and easily changed. Um, so yeah, get into some of the threat indicators that kind of come from that, and really that's where we kind of get into IOCs, right? Indicators of compromise. Um, Threat hunting is both responsible for understanding and being able to research and search for those IOCs within uh, the network that you're working in, but also responsible for being able to pull out specific IOCs that matter to the community, right? Because part of threat hunting is that collaborative process. That's one of the key components of it, is being able to collaborate and share threat indicators or things that are bad and may affect the community. So really being able to interpret that, being able to extract those key pieces and knowing, is this an IOC? And could someone else be able to easily find this? Could this help another company somewhere else? Um, Attribution is a big one. A lot of people, that it usually belongs to Microsoft and CrowdStrike and a few other one of the bigger names. But yeah, it could help with that attribution piece too, understanding um, IOCs that are related to specific threat actors. It allows the individual to understand who is coming after them, and then it allows them to also understand the I guess the psychology behind it, right? What could potentially be that threat actor's motivations to go after the network that I am threat hunting within. um, and it allows the company to build that cyber resilience into their programs, and then really understand, okay, here are the true threats to us and their motivations to why they would come after us. Um, but yeah, as fun as it sounds, right? As almost simple as it can sound, there are some challenges in threat hunting. Uh, I don't want to say you have to be super skilled or whatever, but there is just that general knowledge basis that you have to have. to kind of be effective at it. I think it definitely is something that could be learned as you go, um, but it can be a lot. It is not just okay, we have an alert, go look at it. It is definitely, you have to understand key cybersecurity principles. You have to understand how different applications work, and you're not going to know how everyone works, right? So there's that training and that constant learning that always has to be happening. You have to understand, how does this work? How does that work? It's nothing different from a lot of other, cybersecurity disciplines. But that can be a challenge for some people. But it's worth it. Resource constraints can be a big thing. A lot of these tools can be pricey. Um, Sometimes you're only working with process data, and that's all you get, and that can make hunting at scale extremely difficult. Um, it it's expensive to store a lot of data all the time, and maybe companies may not be willing to spend that much into their security programs, right? And then, like was mentioned earlier, right? False positives and false negatives. Uh, since you're working from a place of trying to find the unknowns, you're going to see a lot of them. In fact, I want to say a lot of the threat hunts I have done um, have come up empty. That doesn't mean it was a bad hunt. It doesn't mean it was a fail. It means it, one, didn't see the threat actor in the time frame that I was looking at. But also there's a lot of noise. Threat actors, they're getting more sneaky, if you will. They're trying to blend in with the noise. If I don't want to be caught, I might as well look like everybody else. Um, so really trying to find that balance between not tuning yourself out, as I like to say, um, or tuning out so many false positives that you'll never find anything. But those can sometimes be some of the challenges that are faced in threat hunting for sure. Um, yeah, I was just about to do that. But yeah, I think there's so much more we can talk about. And if you guys are interested, for sure, let me know, or you know, uh, let admin know. He'll definitely hook something up. But yeah, I'll definitely open the floor to any questions, or if someone wants to pop on and ask the questions, have something like a, I don't know, back and forth communication thing.
You guys have like 500 questions, 10 minutes. Yeah, I got a question for you, actually.
Yeah, what's up, man?
So, what would you do if you came across like a polymorphic malware? How would you create a signature for that? If it's constantly changing, how are you going to hunt that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I would hit that behavioral uh, base, right? Um, because while something may be polymorphic, right, its behaviors may be the same each time. When it executes, it's always going to drop this file, even if the file name changes. Maybe the directory stays the same. Potentially the C2 infrastructure it's reaching out to is the same. Um, the I guess the how often it's reaching out to the C2 may be the same. So I think that's what I would look at, and you could definitely also use that kind of anomalous kind of base detection, where it's like, okay, this is outside of the normal. We just had a file that you could kind of use, I guess, the size of the file, right? If this is a large file that exists in this file, that hey, we never see something that large, or maybe we don't see anything that small. I think there's ways of going after that. But yeah, I think those polymorphic types of malware can be difficult, but I think we've hit a few of them before, and we were able to get after it and make sure we were secure.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Does
man.
anybody else have any questions?
I don't know if people could pop up on Mike. Totally open to that too. Gotcha. You're coming in a little low, but yeah, I got you. Yeah, I think it was kind of a hunt, uh, and really gotta. I owe this one a lot to Bambucha. Definitely, it was a tag team kind of operation, but I want to say a few months ago we ran into a threat actor who was targeting NetScaler. Um, and so they were, man, they were specifically running this file. I think they were loading into the Windows Update client, and that's how we were able to see it. So the Windows Update client was executing some interesting things, and that's kind of like that anomaly detection, right? Windows Update client typically only spawns this specific process, and now all of a sudden it's spawning a different process. That's weird. So behaviorally weird, but also there is an anomaly there as well. Um, so I think recently that was my favorite, especially, man, part of it we did see a threat actor actually made a phone call and spoofed the organization's IT department, but ended up still running the same TTPs, the same post exploitation TTPs. So the other ones, it was exploitation of NetScaler ADC, and then post exploitation TTPs, the Windows Update client, right, running the CMD, I believe, or it was PowerShell. Can't remember off the top of my head. But in another instance, around the same time frame, seeing, okay, they weren't maybe able to get through to the NetScaler ADC, so they weren't able to exploit it. But instead, being a persistent threat, they said, all right, well, we'll spoof the IT department, get a user to go ahead and go and download a NetScaler update from a website that had the organization's name within the URL, which was super interesting, and execute the payload, which then did the same post exploitation tactics that we saw in the exploitation um, organization as well. So that one was very fun to kind of go after, and then also kind of, um, man, investigate and really get to the bottom of it. I think there is a blog out there for it. Try to find that later. But yeah, that was my favorite. Yeah, man. Looks like we got another one. When you go on a hunt, is there something you always check first? Um, Man, I guess my sanity first. But really, it is just kind of, it depends. It depends on what your hypothesis is. It's nothing specifically that you could always check because it is kind of always changing. If you have reoccurrent threat hunts that you have going on, obviously there are some things that you've built into that reoccurrence to be able and go, okay, well, let's check this first, and then check this after. Hopefully that kind of answered it. But yeah, basically, like all good answers, it depends. But yeah, man. Let's see. Let's see. What's some advice you have for newbies trying to get into threat hunting? From what you've described, it's definitely more of an advanced and technical cyber role. Um, any favorite simulation training platforms that have helped you in your career? Any specific groups or newsletters you like following for info? Man, I'm not gonna lie. I came into threat hunting after doing some offensive security, which I think helped. Uh, but then even before that, I was a maintainer turning, ratchets. I don't think I was super technical, and while there is some technical abilities that you have to have when going in through it, I don't know if it's too advanced. Honestly, I think it is something someone could get into without being too, I have all these skills. But yeah, I think really just understanding core security principles, understanding I guess whatever type of environment you're trying to get into. If you know Windows like the back of your hand and understand how these different components work together, the registry, the different tactics that exist, understanding MITRE for sure, understanding the Lockheed kill chain, right? Understanding how threat actors work, that kind of psychology behind it, I think helps build a good threat hunter. It's more so a how you think than kind of what you know, kind of career field, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's kind of the best advice I have is that like you have to kind of shift your mindset as to how do you go about researching things, how do you go about finding things, being super inquisitive and super nosy, and then also, in my opinion, having that offensive security background and understanding, okay, these are how certain attacks work. Uh, that one is super, super important. But yeah, man. Um, as far as simulation and training, I was lucky enough to get all my training through the military. So pretty thankful for that. Don't know of too many, especially ones that are not ridiculously expensive. Kind of like GCFA, GCIH. Those are really good. But I don't know if $8,000 is it. I know Blue Team's Labs online, really good product to go ahead, and I think they have a few threat hunting modules. Um, and then, man, Bambucha, do you mind sharing that cert that you did? Um, he has one that he said was pretty good, but I don't want to mess it up. But yeah, it's a pretty good one. As far as groups and letters, man, I think just following up or even looking at like CISA, right? All the stuff that they put out, the advisories, any blog posts from like Bleeping Computer, right? Going through and looking at those blogs of recent attacks, recent incidents. Um, I think that really helps. It allows you to kind of think through, okay, well, how would I go about finding that, or and really understanding the threats that are faced today, right? Like these companies and organizations are facing. So that would probably be my go-to for, uh, I guess, newsletters adjacent is, yeah, definitely those blogs for sure, man. Hopefully that helped out. Um, yeah, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Mambucha. Um, let's see. How can I start doing threat hunts? Don't have access to EDR of any company as I am not working for any company. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, man. If you go to my LinkedIn, I'll have to share that later. I actually it was for the bank that I bank with. There was a tech scam going on, right? Um, so there was an ability to go ahead and basically do some threat hunting because not all of it's host space, right? Or has to exist within an enterprise. Threats exist kind of all over the place. So I took that tech scam. I went ahead and looked at that URL. Um, and just visited it. Obviously through I think I did Browserling first. A really great tool, by the way. Um, and then using like my VM, went ahead and checked out the website. Was trying to see what was going on. Um, yes, that one too. Hunt.io is also pretty good. Um, but yeah, I was able to look at that, be able to, hey, when I click on this or when I go to this URL, it's taking me to the there's a Credit Karma or something like that. It's taking me to the review page for this bank. And as far as um, text scams go, that'd be pretty weak. So that led to some hypothesis generation, right? What is Why is it that I cannot visit this website from my browser? And then thinking through, okay, well, this is coming through text, so most likely this requires some sort of or there's some logic going on behind the door or behind the scenes, looking at specifically man what's the word I'm looking for? Words. It's specifically looking for your user agent string, right? So I decided, okay, well, let me just switch the user agent string. Boom, got to see the scan page, what they're looking for. It was looking for, typical phishing stuff, right? Wants your username, password, and then once you click through that, go ahead and give me your address, your credit card number, all that fun stuff. And then it forwards you to the actual landing page of the actual bank. So yeah, I guess that's a really good way to start is, find a threat and just kind of dig in, try to understand what's going on with it. Like I said, a lot of threat hunting is mindset based. So if you can go look for it, hey, you can find it. And obviously, um, get a VM, download some, you do like sysmon, right? And detonate some malware and see what that looks like, and try to figure out, okay, well, if I wrote a detection, and you can go check out Sigma, the Sigma detection rules. If I wrote a detection, what would that look like? So you can kind of take it from cradle to grave that way. What would I do if this detonated, and how could we detect that? But yeah, that would be my advice as to how to start threat hunting, I guess, without a job right now in threat hunting. Good question though, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up. Um, yeah, thank you so much for all that. If anybody has any other questions, you can probably ping them in the general chat. Just start throwing questions at them, see how long it lasts. Yeah,
Be
man.
around.
Go ahead.
Yeah, dude. I appreciate you having me on here. It was great talking to everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. Awesome. Cool.
Peace.
Later.